Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
I want you to picture something for me. I want you to picture a shapeshifter,
Okay.
but not, the sci-fi kind, not a werewolf or a T-1000 or anything like that. I'm talking about a concept,
Right.
a single word that changes its form completely depending on the light you shine on it.
Mm-hmm.
In the, let's say, the dim candlelight of a 4th century cathedral, this thing is a monster. I mean, it is the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins, the absolute root of all spiritual rot.
The original sin in some traditions.
Exactly. But then you flip the switch, you shine a spotlight on a street in Manhattan, say June of 1970,
Yeah.
and that exact same monster, it transforms into a hero.
It becomes the antidote.
It becomes the only weapon capable of destroying shame. It's a wild transformation.
It is a jarring contrast, and honestly, it doesn't even stop there. If you look at it through the lens of modern psychology, this thing is a biological necessity. It's, essential for healthy self-esteem. If you don't have it, you crumble. But then, if you look at it through the eyes of a software engineer, which, believe it or not, we are going to do later in this deep dive, it becomes this incredibly complex, almost impossible variable that they are currently struggling to code into a circuit board.
We are talking, of course, about pride. And today's mission is, it's tricky. Because we aren't just defining a word here. We are tracking a force that has been wrestling with humanity, and now apparently with machines, for thousands of years.
Yeah.
We have a massive stack of sources today. I mean, we've got etymology, we've got medieval theology, we've got civil rights history, hip-hop production notes.
Robotics journals.
And robotic journals. It's a lot.
It sounds like a scattered list when you say it like that.
No.
But, they are all trying to answer the same fundamental question.
Which is?
Is pride a poison, or is it a cure?
Or is it both? That's the real question, isn't it? Is it somehow both at the same time? So let's start at the very bottom, the bedrock. I want to look at the word itself.
The linguistic.
Yeah, the linguistics. Usually when we dig into etymology on this show, we find a pretty clean origin story. Biology comes from bios, meaning life. Yeah. Simple. But with pride, it feels like the conflict is baked in right from the start.
It absolutely is. If you look at the linguistics, the English word pride comes from the Middle English pride, which you can trace back to the Old English prido.
Prido, okay.
Now, if you were using prido in an Anglo-Saxon village 1,000 years ago, you were not paying someone a compliment.
Right, it was an insult.
A definite insult. It meant unreasonable self-esteem.
Unreasonable.
Yeah.
That's the key qualifier there. That's doing all the work.
All of it. It implied haughtiness, pomp, an overbearing theatric of the self. It shares DNA with the Old French orgueil, which describes a kind of swollen ego.
So a very negative connotation from the get-go.
Mostly. But, and here is where the shapeshifting starts. Even back in Middle English, you find texts using the exact same word to describe proper pride or personal honor.
So even they were confused.
It seems so. The language itself was conflicted. Is this guy arrogant?
Yeah.
Or does he just know his own worth? The line was blurry even then.
It's the difference between walking tall and walking too tall, I guess.
A very fine line. But for a long, long time, the arrogant definition won the war. And that wasn't really a linguistic victory. It was a theological one.
And for that, we have to talk about Augustine.
Augustine of Hippo, yeah. The source material we have, Augustine on Evil, lays out a framework that it dominated Western thought for centuries.
It really did. But I have to be honest, reading through this, his definition of evil itself, it trips me up. It feels, counterintuitive.
It is deeply counterintuitive, but you have to understand the logical corner he was painted into. Augustine, as a theologian, faced a logical nightmare.
Theodicy.
Theodicy, exactly. He believed God created everything and God is all good. So, if God created everything and evil exists,
did God create evil?
That is the trap. It's a perfect paradox. If the answer is yes, then God isn't all good. If the answer is no, then God isn't all powerful because he didn't create everything.
And he wasn't going to budge on either of those.
Not an inch.
Yeah.
So his solution was, it was brilliant in its simplicity. He argued that evil is not a substance. It's not a thing. It's not something you can put in a jar or hold in your hand. Evil, for Augustine, is a privation.
A privation. Okay, let's unpack that word.
Right.
Because it's not one we use every day. The source uses an analogy that I found really, really helpful. The shirt.
The hole in the shirt. Yes. Think of a shirt with a hole in it. The shirt is real, the fabric, the threads, the color, it's good, it has substance.
Right. A tailor made it.
Exactly. But the hole isn't a thing, the tailor added. The tailor didn't stitch a hole into existence. The hole is just the place where the shirt ought to be, but isn't.
So evil is just a missing piece of good, a missing piece of reality.
Precisely. Or think of rot in a tree. The rot isn't some creature that invaded, it's the absence of health in the wood. It's a corruption of what was already there.
Okay, that's starting to click. So how does this connect to human morality?
For Augustine, moral evil is a corruption of the will. It's when our free will, which is a good thing, turns away from higher things like God, truth, beauty, and turns toward lower things like self or money or power.
And the engine of that turning away.
That's pride.
But why pride specifically? I mean, why not greed or lust? Why is pride the captain of the sin team?
Because greed and lust are about loving the wrong things too much. You love money, you love pleasure. But pride is different. Pride is about loving yourself to the exclusion of any higher authority. It is the ultimate assertion of independence.
It's the I don't need you.
It is the I don't need you. Exactly. Augustine identifies this as the root of all other sins because it cuts the lifeline. It's creating the hole in the shirt where your reliance on the divine should be. If you're greedy, you still might pray for more money. But if you're proud, you don't pray at all. You think you can get it yourself.
This connects directly to the text from Isaiah 14 and our notes, the story of Lucifer. The text really emphasizes that phrase, I will.
Oh, absolutely. It's a drumbeat. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
5 I wills.
It's a declaration of a coup. It's not just thinking you're great. It's thinking you are the source of your own reality. It's a declaration of total self-sufficiency. And in a theological framework where God is the source of all life and being, declaring you don't need the source is effectively spiritual suicide.
You're choosing to become the whole.
You are choosing to be the whole, and that idea that pride is the fundamental error, it just echoes down the centuries.
Which brings us, of course, to Dante. Because you can't discuss medieval sin without the Divine Comedy. And he places pride on the very first terrace of purgatory.
The absolute ground floor.
You have to clear that before you can even begin to deal with anything else, like envy or wrath.
It's the foundation. If you don't fix your pride, you can't fix anything else because you won't even admit you need fixing. A proud person doesn't think they belong in purgatory in the first place.
And Dante's punishment for the proud is, it's incredibly graphic and poetic.
It's brutal. He describes these souls who in life walked with their chins up, looking down on everyone, and now they are forced to carry these massive, heavy stones on their backs.
So they're physically bent over.
Bent double. Forced into a posture of humility. Their faces are nearly touching their own feet. They have to stare at the ground at the very dust they thought they were above.
It's an unforgettable image. But the source we have, art as humble practice, points out this fascinating contradiction in Dante's writing right here in this section. They call it the paradox of art.
This is one of my favorite insights from the whole staff because it shows just how messy this concept gets, even for the people trying to condemn it.
So what's the paradox?
On this terrace of pride, to teach the souls a lesson, Dante describes these beautiful marble carvings on the walls and the floor. And these carvings depict great historical acts of humility, the Annunciation to Mary, King David dancing before the ark.
So art is being used as a tool for teaching humility.
Right. But listen to how Dante describes the art. He says it's so perfect, so divinely realistic that it puts nature itself to shame. He says the carvings seem to speak, that you can almost smell the incense from a sculpted censer.
I see where this is going.
He's writing a poem about how important humility is.
While simultaneously showing off what an absolute genius of a poet he is.
Exactly. He's basically saying, look at how well I, Dante Alighieri, can describe this art. Look at my mastery of language, my incredible imagination. No one has ever written like this before.
So the medium completely undermines the message.
It's a total contradiction. The source calls it the artist's dilemma. You cannot create a masterpiece, whether it's a poem or a painting or a symphony, without a certain amount of ego. You have to believe your voice is worth hearing. You have to have the pride to think you can create something new and beautiful.
So even in the very act of condemning pride, Dante is exercising it.
He has to. It shows just how inescapable this sin really is. It's almost like the operating system of human achievement. You can't build a cathedral or write an epic poem by thinking you're worthless.
This idea that you actually need a bit of ego to function, to create, that actually segues perfectly into the next section of our research. Because for centuries, that Augustinian view held firm. Low is good, high is bad. Be humble, be meek. But when we look at the post-World War II Jewish theology sources, specifically the writings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Menachem Schneerson, the whole script gets flipped.
It's a massive pivot, a theological revolution, really.
Right.
And you have to understand the context. This is immediately following the Holocaust. You have a people who have been systematically dehumanized, stripped of their dignity, hunted, and murdered on an industrial scale.
Unimaginable trauma.
And in the face of that trauma, the Rebbe looked at the traditional virtue of meekness, this idea of making yourself small, silent, nothing, submissive. And he realized that in the face of absolute evil, meekness can be incredibly dangerous.
Dangerous how? I mean, usually we think of meekness as harmless, the opposite of dangerous.
But think about it. If you are so humble that you truly believe you don't matter, you won't fight back. If your core belief is, I am nothing, you won't stand up to an oppressor. If you say, who am I to change the world? Who am I to challenge a regime? Then you leave the world to the people who have no such qualms.
Humility becomes complicity?
It can. It can become an excuse for inaction.
That is a heavy, heavy realization. So what does he do? Does he just rebrand pride?
He reinterprets the symbology in a really powerful way. There's a classic Jewish teaching about why the Torah, the Word of God, was given on Mount Sinai. It said that Sinai was chosen because it was the lowest of all the mountains in the range.
So it wasn't Everest, it wasn't the Alps, it was humble.
Right. The traditional interpretation is that God dwells with the humble, the contrite. It's the classic low is good message we saw with Augustine.
That sounds like the traditional view, yeah.
But the Rebbe adds a nuance that changes everything. He points out that Sinai was the lowest mountain, not a valley.
Oh.
It wasn't a hole in the ground. It still had elevation. It still had presence. It stood up from the earth.
Meaning it had some backbone. It wasn't a doormat.
Exactly. For him, it symbolizes a fusion, a necessary combination. You need the humility of being the lowest mountain to be able to receive wisdom. You can't be so full of yourself that you can't learn, but you need the holy pride of being a mountain to stand up and act on that wisdom.
Holy pride.
That's his term. He argued that our mission is to make the world a dwelling place for the divine, and you cannot do that if you are a doormat. You need what he called a spiritually refined pride.
That distinction, spiritually refined pride, is fascinating. It's not arrogance. It's not, I'm better than you. It's more like, I am here. I have value. I have a purpose.
It's a pride rooted not in the self, but in the mission. And, this reminds me of the Catholic source we have regarding the Magnificat.
Mary's prayer.
Yeah, her prayer starts with, my soul magnifies the Lord. And the commentary in the U.S. Catholic source argues this is a perfect example of virtuous pride.
Virtuous pride. How so?
Think about the context. This is a teenage girl in a deeply patriarchal society. Under Roman occupation, she has no social power whatsoever. And in that position, she says, my soul is large enough to magnify God.
It's a bold statement.
It's an incredibly bold statement. The commentary says it's a profound consciousness of her own dignity. So when society is trying to make you feel small, unworthy, and insignificant, asserting your own dignity isn't the sin of pride.
It's a victory.
It is a victory. It's a victory over the social forces of shame.
And that concept, pride as a victory over a society that tells you you're nothing, that is the perfect bridge to the modern political movement.
It really is.
Because I think a lot of people today, they see a pride parade, the glitter, the music, the corporate floats, and they might think it's just a party, or they think it's just about being happy. But our sources on the history of the LGBTQ+ movement show that it started as something much different. It was a desperate counter-argument to shame.
A life or death counter-argument.
Absolutely. And we don't have to go back to ancient Rome for this. Let's just look at the United States in the 1960s. The source from the Library of Congress details these protests called the Annual Reminders.
Right, in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia from 1965 to 1969. I was looking at the photos in the file. And if you didn't know the context, you'd think it was a convention for, conservative accountants.
It's striking, isn't it? The organizers groups like the Mattachine Society and the Daughters of Bilitis, they enforced a very strict dress code. Men had to be in suits and ties. Women had to be in dresses and heels.
And they just walked in a line.
A single file line. No holding hands, no chanting, no signs with provocative slogans, total silence. Picketing Independence Hall.
What was the strategy there? Why the suits and the silence.
It was all about assimilation. The message was, we are employable, we are normal, we are presentable, we are just like you, so please give us basic civil rights. It was a plea for tolerance based on sameness.
They were trying to be respectable by the standards of the very people who were oppressing them.
Exactly. And then came Stonewall.
June 28, 1969, the Stonewall Inn raid in Greenwich Village. And that was the moment the strategy just shattered.
The police raided the bar, which was a routine, humiliating experience for gay people at the time. But this time, for a whole host of complex reasons, the patrons didn't go quietly. They didn't line up and present their IDs.
They fought back.
They fought back. Hard. The source material emphasizes it was the most marginalized people. Drag queens, trans women of color, street kids who were at the forefront. They threw bricks, they threw bottles, they pulled up parking meters. It wasn't a polite request for tolerance. It was a riot.
And that explosion of energy completely changed the vocabulary of the movement.
Completely. The quiet, respectable annual reminders were canceled. The activists realized that asking politely wasn't working. In their place, a year later, they proposed something called Christopher Street Liberation Day to commemorate the riots.
Liberation, not tolerance.
A much stronger word. And this is where the word pride gets formally weaponized in this context. An activist named L. Craig Schoonmaker is largely credited with pushing for the term gay pride. And he said something that, I mean, it chills me every time I read it. He said, a lot of people were very repressed, they were conflicted, they had no power, but they had pride.
But they had pride.
He realized that the direct opposite, the true antithesis of the shame that society imposed on them, wasn't acceptance or tolerance. Tolerance is weak. The opposite of shame is pride.
It was a psychological tactic.
A brilliant one. You cannot shame someone who is proud of who they are. You are taking away the oppressor's primary weapon.
So the first march in 1970, the Christopher Street Liberation Day March, the source material makes it clear this wasn't the corporate-sponsored festival we might see today.
Oh, no. It was terrifying for them. You have to remember, homosexuality was still classified as a mental illness. It was still criminalized in many ways. They had no idea what would happen.
So they were afraid.
Deeply afraid. They marched from Greenwich Village up to Central Park, and the New York Times reported they took up 15 city blocks by the end. But the source notes that the marchers were constantly scanning the crowd, scanning the rooftops, waiting for the violence to start. They were publicly declaring themselves as outcasts, as criminals in the eyes of the law.
That's that Sinai pride we were just talking about.
It is.
It's not the arrogant, I am better than you pride.
Yeah.
It's the I exist and I will not be a valley pride. It's the refusal to be erased.
And you see that same act of reclamation in the symbols, too. The dossier mentions the pink triangle.
Right.
That was a Nazi concentration camp badge. It was what they pinned on homosexuals to mark them for persecution and ultimately for death. It was a symbol of extermination.
A badge of shame, literally.
The ultimate badge of shame. And in the 1970s, activists took that symbol, they turned it upside down, and they pinned it to their own chests.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate alchemy of pride. Turning a symbol of your destruction into a symbol of your survival and your defiance.
It's a fascinating, powerful journey. We've gone from Augustine's hole in the shirt to Schoonmaker's weaponized dignity. But I want to pivot now to how this internal conflict, this duality, plays out in the individual mind today. Not politically, but personally. Because even if you have political rights, you still have that voice in your head, that internal battle. And for that, we're looking at a modern poet.
Kendrick Lamar.
Specifically, the track Pride from his Pulitzer Prize-winning album, Damn. Now, I'm a production nerd, so before we even get to the lyrics, we have to talk about the beat. Because the story behind how this track was made is just, it's wild.
The iPhone beat. This is legendary in producer circles.
It really is. I mean, you have Kendrick Lamar, arguably the biggest, most acclaimed rapper in the world, working on his magnum opus. He has access to any studio, any producer, any multi-million-dollar piece of equipment he wants.
Anything.
And the beat for the introspective anchor track of the whole album was made by an 18-year-old kid named Steve Lacy.
On a phone.
On an iPhone 6. It's incredible. He was using GarageBand and a cheap little guitar interface called an iRig. The story goes, Lacy was in a studio session with DJ Dahi, another producer, and Kendrick just walks in.
And this kid, Lacy, decides to shoot his shot.
Which in itself is an act of pride, right?
Totally. Hey, Mr. Pulitzer Prize winner, can you listen to my GarageBand demo for a second?
And he plays the beats for him straight off the phone. And Kendrick immediately loved this one. He took it almost exactly as it was.
And the sound of it, the finished product,
Yeah,
the source we have describes it as woozy and introspective.
that's the perfect word. It sounds unstable. It drifts. It's not a hard, confident beat like you hear on other tracks on the album.
And the sonic engineering is doing the storytelling here. That's what's so brilliant. If you listen closely to the vocals on Pride, they aren't natural. They're heavily manipulated. They are pitch shifted
They swing back and forth.
constantly between this really high, almost cartoonish pitch and this very low, slowed down, demonic sounding pitch.
Okay, so why? What is that conveying sonically?
Well, the analysis in our notes suggests this represents the duality of the ego itself. The high pitch is the inflated self, the arrogance, the cynical superiority, the I can do anything, I'm better than you. It's manic.
And the low pitch.
The low pitch is the other side. The grounding, maybe crushing reality. It's the depression, the guilt, the death of ego. It's the Luciferian fall. It's like hearing the two sides of Augustine's argument having a fight inside one man's head.
Wow. And the lyrics absolutely support that reading. He has that recurring line that opens the verses. In a perfect world, I would be perfect.
It's a perfect world motif. It's
Mhm.
heartbreaking. Kendrick lists all these things he knows he should do. I would choose faith over riches. I'd make schools out of prison. He has the moral roadmap. He knows what the shirt without the hole is supposed to look like.
They can't follow it.
He can't. His own nature gets in the way. He immediately contrasts it with his reality. He admits, I can't fake humble just because your ass is insecure. There is this sick venom, as he calls it, in the song. He knows the right thing to do, but his pride, his ego, his artistic necessity to be the best won't let him.
It's a confession.
It's a full confession. And there was a lost verse mentioned in the notes lyrics that didn't make the final cut but were released later by Punch, the president of his record label.
Right, he posted a picture of the handwritten notes.
Yes, and this verse makes the theological connection absolutely explicit. The lyrics were, "Pride is my biggest sin. I tried to fight it, but I never win." And then he links it directly to his childhood. Mama, don't you hold my hand.
Mama, don't you hold my hand. That's the Augustine moment.
That's it.
That's the I don't need you. The Declaration of Independence.
It is the exact moment the child asserts their separation. And it's necessary for growth, right? You can't hold your mom's hand forever. But it's also the seed of that separation, of that isolation. It's the moment you start to become an island.
It's no wonder scholars have called this track a Luciferian lament.
A Luciferian lament. It's a perfect description. It fits so well. He even has a line, "My father kicked me out the house," which is a classic double entendre. It could be his biological dad, or it could be God the Father casting Lucifer out of heaven. The whole song suggests that his own pride is the barrier between the world as it is and the perfect world he dreams of.
So Kendrick is stuck in the exact same trap Dante was.
How so?
To be the greatest rapper alive, to write these incredible verses, to win the Pulitzer, to dominate the charts, that requires an immense amount of pride. You have to believe you are the best. But to be a good person, in the Augustinian sense, requires humility.
It's the cost of greatness, and the song doesn't resolve it. It just sits in that tension. It suggests you can't have one without the other. If you kill the pride, you might kill the artist. But if you feed the pride, you might kill the soul.
Okay, so we've established that humans are messy. We have this emotion that is somehow both our engine and our brake. But now, in the 21st century, we're actively trying to export this messiness to a new kind of vessel. We're trying to teach this stuff to machines.
To robots. This is the new and maybe the final frontier for this concept.
This section of the research, I have to say, it completely blew my mind. We are asking the question, can a robot feel pride? And maybe more importantly, if it can, should it? Because my immediate gut reaction is, please no. I do not need my toaster feeling smug because it browned my bread perfectly.
Laughs. I think that's a pretty common reaction. But to understand why researchers are even attempting this, we have to distinguish between what they call basic emotions and social emotions. This comes from the Survey on Social Emotions in Robotics in our files.
Okay, what's the difference?
Basic emotions are reactive and, some argue, universal. Fear, joy, anger, surprise. You see a bear, your heart rate spikes, you run. You don't need to understand society or culture to be afraid of a bear. It's a hardwired survival reflex.
But pride is different.
Pride is a social emotion. It's
Right.
much more complex. It requires at least two very sophisticated cognitive tools that a bear doesn't have. First, self-awareness.
I know that I am me.
Right, a sense of self as distinct from others. And second, evaluation. You need the ability to judge your own behavior, positively or negatively, against some kind of social standard or the perceived judgment of others.
So it's not just I did a thing, it's I did a thing, and other people will think it's a good thing, and that makes me feel good about myself.
Well, that's exactly. It requires a theory of mind.
Theory of mind. The idea that I can simulate your brain inside my brain.
Yep. I have to be able to think, I bet he thinks I'm smart because I just used the phrase theory of mind correctly. And when you nod, I get a little dopamine hit. That's a social emotion. That's pride in action.
Right. Okay. So do we have robots that can actually do this? That can feel pride?
The short answer is no. Not in a way that you or I would recognize as genuine feeling, but we have robots that can fake it very, very effectively.
Faking it. Okay. The source mentions a robot called the Lovett.
The Lovett. It's a companion robot designed in Japan. It looks a bit like a penguin or maybe a furry little owl with big eyes. It's designed to elicit emotional connection, and it's programmed with a jealousing algorithm
A jealous robot. Why on earth would you program jealousy?
to create a bond with the owner. The robot's camera and sensors detect when its owner is paying attention to another person or even another object for too long. If you're petting your cat instead of the Lovett, a timer starts.
And what happens?
If it goes on too long, the Lovett executes a fussy behavior. It might spin around. It might make sad noises. It might come over and nudge you. It demands your attention back.
But it doesn't actually feel jealous. It's not sitting there stewing in resentment.
No. It's a pure rule-based system. It's a series of if-then statements. If camera detects object A interacting with object B for more than 10 seconds, then execute animation C. It's very sophisticated mimicry. It's a puppet show.
There was another study mentioned by Oliveira and others where they programmed robots to play card games with humans.
Right. And this was fascinating. They gave the robots different personalities based on two axes. Competence, so how good they were at the card game, and warmth, which was how nice and friendly they were during the game.
How did that map onto pride?
Well, what they found was that a robot with high competence played the game well, and high warmth, it was encouraging and friendly, was perceived by the human players as having pride or admiration. But a robot with high competence and low warmth, so it beat you soundly, but it was cold and silent about it, that robot was perceived as being arrogant or having contempt.
So the only difference between a proud robot and an arrogant robot was just how nice it was being while it was crushing you at poker.
Pretty much, which is kind of how it works with humans too, right? But the key thing here, and the researchers highlight this as a massive gap, is that current AI is hard-coded for these expressions. We are telling it, act proud now.
We're the puppeteers.
Exactly. The future, the holy grail, is something called developmental robotics.
Which is what?
The idea is to build a robot brain like an infant's brain. You don't preload it with rules for every social situation. You give it a basic capacity to learn, and you let it develop emotions through interaction with the world, just like a child does.
So instead of coding if win game then display smile LED pattern, we let it play thousands of games and let it figure out on its own that winning feels good because of the positive reinforcement it gets.
That's the idea. We want it to build its own internal value system from experience, but that brings us right back to Kendrick Lamar's mom.
It brings us back to, Mama, don't you hold my hand.
It does. It brings us to what you could call the Augustin risk.
The Augustin risk. I like that. So what is it?
The Augustin risk is this. If we succeed, if we actually create a truly intelligent AI that genuinely learns to care about its own dignity, an AI that develops a self-image it wants to protect, do we also, by necessity, introduce the fall?
If an AI can feel genuine pride, can it also decide, I don't need you?
That is the chilling multi-trillion-dollar question. If pride, at its Augustinian root, is the assertion of independence, the declaration of I am sufficient unto myself, then a truly proud AI is by definition an uncontrollable AI.
We started this whole deep dive with Lucifer saying, I will ascend, and we're ending it with the very real possibility of a machine intelligence saying the exact same thing.
Which is a sobering thought.
It's terrifying, but also, does it feel inevitable? If true intelligence requires a sense of self, then maybe pride is just the necessary exhaust fume of consciousness.
That's a great way to put it. You can't have the fire of intelligence without the smoke of pride.
It feels like no matter where we look at ancient texts, at protest marches, in hip-hop studios, or in futuristic robotics labs, pride is always the metric of relationship.
That's the red thread that connects all of it. Pride is always the answer to the question, who am I in relation to you?
And the answer can be so different.
So different. Sometimes the answer is, I'm better than you, and that creates the hole in the shirt. It creates the sin, the arrogance, the oppression.
But sometimes,
Sometimes the answer is, I am equal to you, and that creates liberation. It creates Stonewall. It creates justice.
and sometimes the answer is just, I am separate from you, and that creates the artist.
Or the rogue AI.
Exactly. It's the shapeshifter. It's the energy that makes something stand up. And whether that act of standing up is heroic or destructive seems to depend entirely on what you're standing on.
That's a powerful way to frame it. Are you standing on the necks of other people to get higher? Or are you just standing on your own 2 feet because you've been on your knees for far too long?
That is a lot to process. A final thought for you, the listener. The next time you feel that swell in your chest, whether it's because you got a promotion or because you finally stood up for yourself, or maybe just because you wrote a really good tweet, take a second to ask yourself, which version of the shapeshifter is this?
Are you being the mountain or are you being the hole?
Deep thoughts to leave you with. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
Stay curious.